In a cozy little burrow, right at the bottom of a very green hill, lived a rabbit named Pip. Pip was a splendid little chap. He had long ears, floppy ears that wiggled when he was happy. He had a fluffy white tail that bobbed when he hopped, and he had a twitchy nose that was simply marvellous at sniffing out the best carrots. Pip lived in a place called Meadowsweet Valley. It was a lovely spot. The grass was always soft, the streams always babbled, and the sun always seemed to shine just right, making everything feel warm and cheerful. Pip loved his home very much. Pip wasn't just any rabbit, you see. He was known for being a rather good gardener. His little patch of earth behind his burrow was his pride and joy. He grew crunchy lettuces, sweet peas. He grew plump little radishes that were as red as a postbox. But his favourite things to grow were carrots. Oh, how he loved carrots! He grew long ones, short ones, fat ones, and thin ones. One sunny morning, a big notice appeared on the old oak tree in the centre of Meadowsweet Valley. It was written in swirly, important-looking letters. The notice announced the annual Grand Vegetable Competition. This was the biggest event of the year. All the animals in the valley would bring their finest, most magnificent vegetables to be judged. Plumpest pumpkin, longest runner bean, most marvellous marrow. The grand prize was a shiny golden watering can. Pip's ears wiggled with excitement when he read the notice. A golden watering can! He could just imagine it, gleaming in the sun next to his carrot patch. He hopped home faster than ever before, his mind buzzing with plans. He would enter the competition, of course, but what would he enter? His carrots were lovely, but perhaps not grand enough. His lettuces were crisp, but maybe a bit ordinary. He needed something truly special, something that would make the judges, a panel of wise old badgers, say ooh and ah. He decided to focus all his efforts on growing a marrow. A marrow was a big challenge. Lots of sun, lots of water, lots of care. Pip found the perfect sunny spot in his garden. He planted a tiny marrow seed with great ceremony. He watered it every single day, using water from the clearest part of the stream. He even built a little straw roof over it to protect it from too much rain. He would talk to the little plant, encouraging it to grow big and strong. "Come on, little marrow," he'd whisper. "You can be a prize winner, I just know it." But oh dear, things did not go according to plan. Pip's marrow plant grew, but it didn't grow very big. The leaves were a bit droopy. The one little marrow that appeared was small and a bit pale. It looked more like a sad cucumber than a marvellous marrow. One evening, as Pip was sadly looking at his tiny marrow, he decided to go for a walk to clear his head. He hopped along the edge of the woods, his ears drooping a little. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the fields. As he passed by old Farmer McGregor's abandoned vegetable patch, something caught his eye. There, nestled amongst the weeds and overgrown grass, was the most magnificent marrow he had ever seen. It was huge. It was a perfect glossy green colour. It was shaped just like a prize-winning marrow should be. It was, in a word, spectacular. Pip's heart did a little flip-flop. He hopped closer, his nose twitching with curiosity. No one had tended to this garden for years. Farmer McGregor had moved away a long, long time ago. This marrow must have grown all by itself, a wild and wonderful accident of nature. It was just sitting there all alone with no one to admire it. An idea, a sneaky little idea, began to sprout in Pip's mind. It was a tempting idea, as tempting as a field full of fresh, crunchy clover. What if he just borrowed it? He looked around. There was no one to be seen. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. No one would ever know. Pip couldn't resist. The temptation was just too big, like the marrow itself. Huffing and puffing, he rolled the enormous vegetable back to his burrow. He hid it carefully under a large bush. His heart thumped like a drum. That night he couldn't sleep a wink. He tossed and turned in his little bed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the giant marrow. Then he saw his friends' disappointed faces. The golden watering can looked dull and tarnished in his dreams. The next day Pip felt awful. The sun was shining, but everything seemed grey. The birds were singing. Their songs sounded sad. He tried to tend his garden but had no energy. He looked at his own little marrow and felt a pang of guilt. It might be small, but it was his. It was honest. The big marrow hidden under the bush felt like a heavy secret. It was a lie he had to carry, much heavier than the marrow itself. He couldn't even enjoy his favorite crunchy carrot. He saw Beatrice Badger polishing a very large pumpkin. Beatrice called cheerfully about the big day and something special he'd grown. Pip's ears drooped. He mumbled and hopped away quickly. He didn't want to talk, afraid the lie would pop out. The secret made him feel lonely and isolated. Meanwhile, his friends chattered excitedly about their honest vegetables. The morning of the grand vegetable competition arrived. The village green was buzzing with excitement. There were tables laden with all sorts of vegetables, bright red tomatoes, bumpy cucumbers, and leafy cabbages. All the animals of Meadowsweet Valley were there, showing off the fruits of their labor with pride. Pip slowly pushed a wheelbarrow towards the green, but inside it wasn't the giant, mysterious marrow. Instead, sitting on a bed of soft leaves was his own small, pale, and slightly wobbly marrow. It was the one he had grown himself. He had decided he couldn't go through with the lie. He placed his little marrow on the competition table, right next to a gigantic one belonging to Barnaby Bear. He felt a bit embarrassed. His marrow looked tiny and insignificant in comparison to all the other magnificent entries. Some of the other animals giggled and pointed at his small vegetable.
"Is that it, Pip?" whispered a squirrel.
Pip's ears burned and he wanted to hide in his burrow. It was hard, standing there with his small, imperfect marrow for all to see. It took a lot of courage. The judges, 3 wise old badgers with spectacles perched on their noses, began their inspection. They walked slowly along the tables, peering at each vegetable. They poked the pumpkins and measured the beans. When they got to Pip's table, they stopped.
The head judge, a very old badger named Mr. Abernathy, looked at Pip's tiny marrow. Then he looked at Pip. "This is a very small marrow, Pip," he said in a gravelly voice.
Pip took a deep breath.
His voice was a little shaky, but he looked the judge right in the eye. "Yes, sir," Pip said clearly. "It is. I tried my best, but this is all that grew. But I grew it myself, and it's an honest marrow." A hush fell over the crowd. Then, Pip continued, his voice getting stronger, "I found a much bigger, more beautiful marrow in the woods. I was going to pretend it was mine so I could win, but it felt wrong. It felt heavy and sad, so I brought my own instead. It's not a winner, but it's the truth."
The crowd was silent for a moment. No one was laughing now. They were all looking at Pip with a new kind of respect. Barnaby Bear, who had the biggest marrow, patted Pip gently on the back. Beatrice Badger gave him a warm, understanding smile. The 3 badger judges huddled together, whispering amongst themselves. They nodded and then turned back to the crowd. Mr. Abernathy, the head judge, cleared his throat and tapped his walking stick for attention. Everyone leaned in to hear what he had to say.
"The prize for the most marvellous marrow goes to Barnaby Bear for this truly tremendous specimen."
Pip clapped too, feeling genuinely happy for his friend. He didn't feel jealous at all. He was just relieved. He had done the right thing, and that was all that mattered. He started to turn away, ready to take his little marrow home.
"Pip, please wait."
Mr. Abernathy walked over to Pip, holding something shiny and gold. It was the grand prize, the golden watering can.
"The judges have decided that while we have a prize for the best vegetable, we must also have a prize for the best gardener. And a good gardener is not just one who can grow big vegetables. A good gardener is an honest one. This year, the grand prize is not for the biggest marrow, but for the biggest heart. This is for you, Pip."
Pip's jaw dropped. His ears shot straight up in surprise. He couldn't believe it. The whole of Meadowsweet Valley burst into cheers, the loudest applause of the day. They weren't cheering for a big vegetable. They were cheering for a small rabbit who had chosen to be honest, even when it was hard. Pip took the golden watering can, his paws trembling slightly. It was much lighter than he had imagined. It didn't feel heavy with a lie. It felt light and bright with the wonderful feeling of truth. He had never felt so proud in his entire life. From that day on, Pip was known throughout Meadowsweet Valley, not just as a good gardener, but as Pip the Honest. And that was a truth he would cherish for all his days.